All advice given is for general information purposes. All legal cases are different, and you should seek the advice of your own attorney before acting or making decisions. No attorney-client privilege applies to communications on this show, and no attorney-client relationship is created by calling or writing in. Attorney Rominger practices only in Pennsylvania and maintains his primary office in Carlisle, Pennsylvania.
Hey, good afternoon. Carl Rominger here. 540-0580. 540-0580 is the talk line number. If you have a legal question, legal concern, you want it answered here on the air, you call me. I'm on call for Lancaster County coming up here for jury trial. So if you're a Lancaster County resident and you want to see a jury trial, I don't know when it's going to happen, but I'll keep my Twitter feed up as to when I'm going to court. And if you want to come to see a real live trial, we can do that. As you know, the courts are open to the public, and you can stop in anytime you want and see a trial. So I'll keep the Twitter feed going as to what's going on with my schedule. But I am on call for a jury trial down there, and it's an exciting one. The last time we did it, the jury was hung, so I got an acquittal on one charge, and they hung on the rest. So I'm going back to retry the remainder of that case. So it'll be interesting. 540-0580. Carl Rominger here to answer your legal questions here on the air. Talk about anything legal. Maybe a little politics since it is the election season. I know that the gridlock is coming soon here, right? What do I mean by that? I mean that the Republican sweep is probably going to happen to the House. I don't know what's going to happen with the Senate. And then the legislation's going to stop. And I was talking to a lawyer the other day who does stuff with health care, and they were telling me that they still aren't able to digest the health care law. They still don't know everything that's in it or what all the effects will be, and none of the regulations that affect it will be there. I was asking my doctor about that, and he said, for instance, they are now supposed to have your medical records available over the Internet. You're supposed to be able to log into your doctor's office and pull up your own, it's the law, pull up your own medical records. The problem is nobody knows what that means. What format should they be in? What are going to be the security codes and clearances? How's that all that going to work? And so the lawyers are still sorting out the health care law. Maybe if we're lucky, it'll be repealed in time before they get it sorted out and implemented. I know it's already affecting things out there. 540-0580. Sue, you're on with Carl Rominger. What's going on? Hi, Sue.
Hi, Carl. I just had a question. My husband was taken to court and on terroristic threat charges.
Okay.
And found not guilty. But we want to know how to get that off of his record.
Oh, you have to file what's called an expungement. And an expungement is a petition you file with the court, which requests the court to literally erase that arrest record, okay?
Okay.
Now, you're not entitled to an expungement if he had been convicted or had pled guilty to a misdemeanor or felony. You can't get it.
Okay.
That said, it's not the hardest thing in the world to do. It's a fairly easy petition from my standpoint. Okay. It's sort of like changing the oil, though, versus rebuilding an engine, if that makes sense. It's something that you could probably figure out how to do on your own, but if you don't have all the things handy and the right wrench and all that good stuff and a bucket for the old oil, it might be simpler to see a guy like me and have me do it.
And on average, what does that cost to have an attorney do it?
The answer on that, I don't know what other attorneys charge. I know some charge a lot, some charge a little. On average, my fee to do that is around $400.
Okay, very good.
And I can tell you that getting it done right is good because you want to make sure it gets erased out of the records. Because what will happen, and this is what we see, is if your husband were picked up again for some reason, and what do I mean by that? Well, he's driving down the road, right, and they stop him for speeding. They're going to check his background. These days, the police know more about you before they get to the car than you can imagine. And the way they treat you, well, he's got an arrest record and it was dismissed, but he probably just beat the charges. He's probably just hired one of them clever lawyers. So the attitude starts right there. And so my experience is keeping your record expunged and cleaned up is important because it will prevent you from simply being, let me give you another example. Let's say you got 2 marijuana possessions in your past, right? When the police pull you over for a speeding ticket, guess what they want to do? Hey, can we search your car? So that accumulates. It's important to get that off. More importantly, if you were to apply for employment or something, you don't want an employer misinterpreting a dismissal as meaning something. They're not supposed to. It's illegal for them to do that. But some of them don't understand how to read the records, and they legitimately just look at it and go, well, there's a terroristic threats on your record.
Right. Okay, well, very good. Thank you so much.
All right, Sue, thanks. And by the way, if you need to get a hold of me, you can go to weekendappointment.com. I do have my phone number and contact information there.
All right, we have it all. Thank you.
Oh, thanks.
Bye-bye.
540-0580, call with your legal questions. I was just talking about the healthcare law and the implementations. Also with health insurance, nobody knows what the costs are going to be. So employers are literally on pins and needles trying to figure out what next year's healthcare costs are going to be. And for a lot of you out there, remember that the employer pays a percentage of the healthcare. And in some places they might pay as much as 100%, others pay half, some pay less. But if you have one of these plans, for instance, where you've been contributing, $50 a pay or something like that, the employer might actually be picking up, $100 a pay or more. Now multiply that by 30 employees, and all of a sudden you can see what their monthly cost is. Now, if that's going to go up and double, they're not going to hire anybody. Well, because of that, that's part of the problem with the economy right now, and why people are not hiring is partly because we're sitting around as employers trying to figure out where on earth the healthcare costs are actually going to go, and who we're actually going to have to cover. And we know that premiums are going up because of the expanded coverage requirements. Dave, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. My talk line number is 540-0580. What's going on, Dave?
Hey, Carl, how you doing?
Good.
Thanks for taking my call. I think we need to give this thing a chance because, first of all, my kids have sickle cell, and my daughter's away at college. Some think she wouldn't make it that far. And her staying on my wife's plan is a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that she's this far from home and she's covered under our plan, it's just priceless, and all the other kids out there with pre-existing conditions. This thing has been festering for almost, for a decade. And we finally get something done. And, I think we're people who can work through whatever we need to work through, but at least we got something started.
Well, but Dave, and here's the criticism of that. Everything has a cost. And
we know that. Everything has a cost. I understand that, but believe me, I understand that. You know what I mean? And why can't we be creative on how to, everybody, put some skin in the game? We know the insurance companies are making tons of money.
Well, wait a minute. Let me give you a very simple answer. And you were right about skin on the game. If you're on, let me give you an example. If you're on like CHIP or any of these other welfare gateway, and I'm not saying you are, I'm just saying if somebody is,
right.
do you know what their copay is for their kids to take them to the emergency room? $0. You know what their copay to go to the doctor is? $0.
Right.
So where do they take the kid? To the emergency room on Wednesday night for a sore throat instead of getting a primary care physician because they don't really have any skin in the game. So, you know what? I agree with you. Skin in the game is important.
But when we talk about that part of our population is what percentage of our cost year.
Yeah, and
I don't think. We beat up on the poor very, very quickly. But we got a lot of people who make a lot of money.
Dave, I have a lot of clients that don't have a lot of money. I represent a lot of different folks in socioeconomic backgrounds, and I can tell you one of my criticisms of my poor clients is they use the emergency room as a doctor, which runs healthcare costs way up. And you know why they do? Because they don't pay the If I go see my doctor, I have a $15 copay. If I go to the emergency, if I have an emergency room visit, guess what I pay? A lot more. So guess which one I try to go to? And
your primary physician. My
primary physician. And the state of Pennsylvania will not require a welfare recipient to take their child to a primary care physician. They will allow them to get a free copay at the emergency room.
This is the part I'm talking about. We're having a conversation. Now, I didn't understand that. That should be fixable.
And here's what I'm saying. I'm saying it doesn't even have to be a lot of money. If it was $5 copay for the emergency room and no copay for the primary care physician, a lot of people would go, you know what, $5, that's enough money to make me wait till tomorrow.
Especially when you don't have much to
Exactly.
Yeah. See, and this is the part I'm talking about with this whole debate. It has to be a debate. We're a smart group of people in this country. We can make this thing work. But the name bashing, the hostile rhetoric and all that madness, it needs to go away. We need to just fix this thing. You know what I'm saying?
Dave, I appreciate your point of view, and I agree we need to fix it. I'm not saying that everything in the new health care law is bad, but you know what? The Constitution was 13 pages long, and now they passed a bill that has 1,600 pages in it that nobody really knows what it says, and that's part of my criticism.
But if we want to look at what it costs to legislate something, how huge is the DOD budget? You know what I mean?
I understand.
How huge is it just the PennDOT budget when it comes to the right to drive a car?
I'll tell you where all the money goes. All the money actually goes to Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and other entitlements mainly, and most of those entitlements, just so I'm clear about this, go to the middle class who gladly accept them and then complain about the poor. So that's the honest answer. Everybody has to cut back. All right, Dave, I got to go to break.
Thanks, guy.
540-0580. Carl Rominger answering your legal questions here. 540-0580. I'll see you after the break. Hey, Carl Rominger here. 540-0580. Answering your legal questions here on Weekend Appointment. Sammy, what's going on?
Yeah.
We lost. Sammy just hung up on himself. I'll bet Sammy will call back. 540-0580. Going to answer your legal questions here. Last caller had a good point. We have to discuss these things. And I understand the concept of no prohibition for pre-existing conditions. The problem with that is when you also have a mandate of you must take a person with no pre-existing condition, let's all wait until we're sick. So what I want to do is I'm proposing we change the law on auto accidents around where I can wait till after I have the crash and then call 1-800-SAFE-AUTO. That way I wouldn't have to spend the premium money up front and create the reserve of money that's used to actually insure everybody. And that's the idea of insurance, folks. You have to pay money in, and you pay each person pays in a small amount so that when somebody needs a large amount, it's available. The idea being is that the average person will not get as much out as they put in, but they're shielded against catastrophic loss. And so once you allow people to simply wait until the disease has ravaged their body to sign up for health insurance, then that's the problem. It's no longer an insurance plan. It's a scam. 540-0580. I had some questions here on weekendappointment.com. Somebody says, PayPal has closed my account for what they consider restricted use. They said that they're going to hold my money that is in the account for up to 180 days. Can they do this? Thanks. Well, just like everything else in life, when you sign up for MasterCard, PayPal, eBay, all those other big services, you agree to terms of service. And there's a user agreement in there, and that's what controls. And I posted that on weekendappointment.com so that people could see it. Sammy.
Yes, Mr. Rominger. Yeah, I was trying to say there. I see a lot of kids out here who are injured through the divorce process, and I'm wondering, it would seem to me that joint custody would really be in order. I'm wondering what percentage of the kids, or how many of your clients go for joint custody? And
do you mean fully shared or just some time with one parent and more time with the other?
I would say fully shared. In other words, 1 week with the one parent and another week with the other parent.
I would say about half of my clients end up in that situation as long as they live within 20 miles of each other. Mm-hmm. The flip side is you have a lot of kids who are born into relationships where one or both parents are relatively disinterested. And then it's a fight to see, who can get the least amount of custody. I don't really think that's a good thing, but I see couples where you have somebody who's a wonderful parent and the other person is a deadbeat man or a woman or who's struggling with their own substance issues, mental health issues, which naturally allow one parent to become the primary caregiver because they're much more fit.
But some lawyers, I think, try and keep the parties fighting with each other. That way they can get a bigger fee.
There are some lawyers that have been accused of that, just as there's some stockbrokers and insurance agents who are known to churn accounts, or mechanics who use shoddy parts. And there's a few bad apples everywhere, but I can tell you that most of the family law practitioners I know are probably guilty of being too attached to the children rather than
Well, I'm glad to hear. Now,
making
I
money
have a
off
final question for you. How much did you contribute to the Republican Party?
Me, personally?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have an exact total on it because I never give money to the party. I give my money to candidates.
You give it to candidates. I see. So you seem like to favor the Republicans.
I usually favor Republicans, but I actually favor libertarians more than I favor Republicans.
Yeah, but if you favor that way, you can maintain your monopoly.
No. I like libertarians. I like people that are social liberals and who are fiscally conservative. So just like Ashton Kutcher, I have no party. All right, Sammy.
Okay, bye-bye.
Yeah, my Monopoly. Oh, God, I wish I had a Monopoly. Oh, where is my Monopoly? 540-0580, Carl Rominger, answering your legal questions and getting grilled on my Republican affiliations. Steve.
Hey, Carl. I want to call and thank you for the having that video out there of the professor that explained how police use questioning and how, basically important our right against self-incrimination is. And I had a couple questions on that. I was wondering if you ever heard, there was a fellow years ago, and I haven't heard anything about it, but his using the right against self-incrimination, he was advising people not to sign their tax return documents. Because when the IRS comes after you, they come after you for filing incorrect information.
Right.
Because once you signed it, it becomes a legal document that they use against you.
You've adopted it. That's right.
His argument was, well, this violates my right of self-incrimination.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and also, if you had, I'll hang up and listen. And also, if you had, could give a little history on why this right is so different than in other countries. And I think under Old English law, didn't you have to prove yourself innocent?
There were times in history when that was the case, yes, and it still is in many places. Steve, you still there? He's hanging up. Okay, Steve hung up. So, Steve, you're going to sit and listen to this answer here. Well, let's go back to you have affirmative duty to do certain things like file your taxes, and by not filing or signing the return, you're being clever about it. But I think they have the right to require you to sign the return. So then you're going to say, well, if you have a requirement on me that I sign something that's false, then I'm not going to do it. And their position is we're not requiring you to sign anything that's false. So just file the right paperwork, and that's the requirement. So I'm not sure how that little legal conundrum sorts out. And I know what the case law says about it, but I'm sure some court somewhere said, no, you got to do it, and you can be compelled. But they're not compelling you to do anything dishonest. Now, as for the other question about the Fifth Amendment, well, that's the right to remain silent, and it's an absolute right, and it was adopted by our forefathers, and it had some history in English law. But the idea basically is that right to remain silent is a protection against torture at the end of the day, and it's a protection against coercion. So, we're not going to torture you, but we're going to lock you up like Rapunzel till your hair grows down out of the castle towers to the ground, and that might take 30 years, so maybe you'll talk just to get out. So by removing that coercive tool from the government, either by imprisoning you or torturing you or withholding something, and meaning that you have the absolute right to remain silent, you're protected from certain governmental action. And then they coupled that with another thing called the corpus delicti rule, which is that if you happen to say something, and that's the only evidence of the crime, well, then that's further protection against torture and coercion, because we're not going to let the government convict you of anything based on your own confession without independent evidence of a crime. So the right to remain silent in its corollary, this corpus delicti rule, I believe, were important founding steps towards our criminal justice system to make sure that the government couldn't just take a political prisoner or blame it on somebody. Because remember, people go, oh, they only want to frame the senator. Well, sometimes you want to frame somebody, so when, some houses burn down in the town and everybody's all upset, the police have got to catch somebody, right? And if they can't catch anybody, maybe that 16-year-old kid down the street who looks suspicious, well, he told us he did it. And they're going to want to prove some evidence. And so the idea of not requiring that person to talk to the authorities to protect themselves, and then not allowing them to use coercive methods and requiring them to connect them to a crime and independent evidence really was there to protect the populace from the government either targeting somebody individually or using somebody as a scapegoat. JD, you're on with Carl Rominger, 540-0580. And I could probably do a whole show on the Fifth Amendment someday. What's going on, JD?
Hey, Carl. My wife, she works for a branch of local government.
Okay.
Has an EEO case ongoing. Been through PHRC and all the processes, and supposed to be in federal court now. Past July, supposed to have a hearing, but her lawyers filed for what you call a summary
judgment?
Summary judgment, yeah. And it's been held up ever since. Is that common?
Yeah. That's been a while, but usually the federal courts are pretty quick in resolving that. Has the summary judgment been decided yet, or is it still pending?
That's my point. It's still pending.
Yeah, so you're waiting for a judge.
Waiting for a judge?
Well, I mean, you're waiting for the judge to decide it. And my issue is I always tell clients, if the judge is taking too long, I mean, what do you want me to do? Write an angry letter to the judge? And sometimes the judge is taking too long simply because the judge is really thinking about it and putting a lot of time into it. And with the federal courts in the Middle District of Pennsylvania, my experience is that they're pretty quick about everything they do. I don't have any criticism of their speed or anything along those lines. So if you thought it was taking a while, I would say it's probably because there's obviously some issue in there that's either requiring a lot of research and a lot of consideration, but you're probably getting a good answer rather than a rushed answer. So
okay, so it's not uncommon then.
No, but I just say that, like, if you, and I'm not going to mention any courts by name, but I can think sometimes there's some judges that are known to be a little slow sometimes, and or the guy that I had who had a nightmare scenario with a master, where it took him 2 years to decide his divorce. There's some stuff out there like that, but the Middle District of Pennsylvania, they're just working on it, and you're going to get an answer, and you're going to get a good one. Might not be the one you want, but it's going to be well researched and written.
Right. Okay, I appreciate it.
All right, take care.
Thank you. Take it easy.
Charles, you there?
Yes. I wanted to ask you about, I see these ads on TV for the diabetes drug Avandia that says that it can possibly give you a heart attack. Okay, I was on Avandia, and I did have a small heart attack and I have a stent put in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, these ads on TV. Okay, I didn't have insurance, and I spent $25,000 of my own cash to have it fixed.
Right.
Okay, now these ads on TV that say come in, join our group thing to sue Avandia to get money out. Is that just a scam, or should I maybe look into? Everybody's telling me, you should look into that.
It is definitely something you should look into, and if you want, what I can do for you, if you contact me off the air, I can walk you into a reputable provider who can evaluate your claim.
Okay, I don't really want to get my I like my doctor. He was just doing what the drug companies.
Oh no, it wouldn't be a suit against your doctor. It would be a suit against the manufacturer. It's a products liability type suit against the drug manufacturer.
Okay, then all these things you read on TV, they're kind of they're just looking to get your business. Yeah,
and the answer on that is, and I gotta be frank with you. They're looking to accumulate large numbers of cases and just bundle them all together. Mm-hmm. And there's certainly some money for the plaintiffs in some of those class actions and large suits. Sometimes, however, it's better not to be part of that class. It's sometimes better to be an individual litigant who then approaches the manufacturer and looks for an individual settlement, because you know how this works. If you have 1,000 widgets, you get one price. If you have one widget, you get a different price per widget. Mm-hmm. And my point is sometimes there's deals that are volume discounts and things like that go on. Now, I'm not saying that's in any given case, but what I would recommend to you is to sit down with your own attorney and go over a strategy to either join one of those suits or potentially bring your own.
Okay, I have no proof that Avandia actually caused my heart attack. Plus, I had other factors. Yeah,
and Charles, that's part of what we would evaluate. In other words, usually in a case like yours, what we would do is put you together with a medical person who would then give us a profile, basically saying, you had these preconditions and you had these sorts of problems, but you didn't have this, and this, and then we would look at where the suit really sits. And you're right. I mean, if you were 5 seconds away from having a heart attack, regardless of whether you took this stuff, it's going to make it more difficult. On the other hand, we're all 5 minutes away from having a heart attack. Okay, so we got to see where you sit on that spectrum.
Okay, then contact my attorney and maybe talk it over with him.
Yeah.
Or call you off the air. Then.
Yeah, if you go to weekendappointment.com, you can get my number there, or send me an email, and I'd be happy to look it over for you, and either we could handle it, or probably what I would do is put you together with a specialist.
Well, okay. That's what I want to know, okay?
All right, Charles.
Bye.
540-0580. I'll see you after the break.
Let's return to Weekend Appointment with Carl Rominger on WHP 580.
Hey, welcome back. Carl Rominger here, 540-0580, answering your legal questions. And I just want to put a word out for our sponsor, Wolfgang Iron and Metal. If you need some scrap metal, scrap car, old junk picked up, they can even pay you for some of it, but they do have free towing. And so you've got that old beater that doesn't run. The dandelions are growing through it. Wolfgang Iron and Metal, 888-265-0792. That's right, 888-265-0792. So call Wolfgang Iron and Metal. Again, that's 888-265-0792. And let's see who's next. John. John, you've been holding patiently.
How you doing, Carl?
Good. What's going on?
Congratulations on expanding your business.
Well, thank you.
I got a question about, I seen an ad, another guy saw an ad on TV, talked about medical malpractice and said the Constitution gives you the right to sue. So I never heard it before. Is it in there somewhere?
It is, the right to sue in any civil matter involving more than $20.
Okay, and is it the federal or state Constitution?
It's in the federal Constitution. The state Constitution, I think it has a corollary in there, but basically gives you access to the courts to settle your disputes. And that's the idea of a lawsuit. A lawsuit is an important invention in human history. Back in the olden days, you had no recourse. So if my chariot flipped over and killed your son or something like that, you would come beat me over the head with a sword to get even. So we developed the lawsuits, or the right to bring a suit against another person with a judgment against them, to end violence and replace retribution with compensation.
Okay, and how did the time frame come into existence?
Like
here in Pennsylvania, you got 2 years. If you don't do it in 2 years, what if you don't know in 2 years?
Well, we have different rules on that. We allow the states some amount of sovereignty to decide these issues. But the idea is, I shouldn't be sued for something that I did 20 years ago. I should know that I only have to look back in my past so far. Now, you as the plaintiff, your 2 years tolls until you discover the harm. So your 2 years is only once you know I harmed you. So if I leave a if I leave a sponge in your belly, and 6 years later you start getting some seriously sharp pains, and you go to the doc, and he's like, well, my gosh, there's a big sponge in there. Didn't know that was in there. That's when your 2 years would start. On the other hand, if your gut hurt terribly for years and years, we might say, well, you had a duty to kind of figure out what was wrong 2 years, way back when it started to hurt.
So the peasants still get treated like peasants. Anyway, one last comment for you.
Yeah.
Obama and his Homeland Security team did pretty good the other day, didn't they?
Well, it looks like they caught some stuff.
Yeah, no planes went into any buildings. Have a good day, buddy.
All right, man. Yeah. Well, people who listen to Bob Durgan know how I feel about Obama, so I'm not going to go into all that here today, but it's not all negative. And last I checked, he's aggressive in Afghanistan too. Paul, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger, 540-0580.
Yeah, hi, Carl. Thanks for taking my call.
No problem.
Okay, I have a situation. I walk my dog every day on the Lebanon Rail Trail. And on about 4 occasions, another fellow comes along with his dog, and his dog attacks mine. And, he usually doesn't have his dog on a leash, and he doesn't keep his dog under control. Mm-hmm. And so far there hasn't been any bloodshed, but I've had arguments with this guy about this. And the last time I tried to squirt his dog, I carry pepper spray with me for self-defense. And the last time I squirted it at him, and I got it on the owner instead of the dog.
Oops.
And we had a fight about it.
Yeah.
And we left. Now, he's on a bicycle, and I'm walking, so I don't know where he lives. I think he goes back into Lancaster County. This is right near the border of the Lebanon-Lancaster line. And I'm wondering what I can do about this. I'm tired of being harassed by this guy's dog. And, I have a right to walk the trail same as anybody else.
Yeah, the short answer is, I guess if you could figure out who he is, you could ultimately report him to the police for not keeping his dog under control, but they're probably not going to care or want to do anything. You could get a cease and desist order against him in civil court.
Right.
That's going to be a lot of money and expense and proof. So I don't know I don't know if you have an adequate or just remedy at law.
Right.
And you guys walk around the same time. Is that part of the issue?
Yeah. Well, I've tried different times, and I haven't seen him, but other times, and it's both ways. Like I see coming and going.
Right.
So I deliberately move off the trail, to keep out of his way, and it still happens. And I'm really getting kind of sick of it. I have a right to walk there in peace.
No, I agree. And
if I dial 911, the police department, would they respond to anything like that?
I would suspect that they wouldn't handle it as an emergency. I would use the non 911 number and maybe do a police report, see if there are any interest in it at all. Okay. I suspect the other thing is wherever this trail is at, you might want to look at the township ordinances to see if there's a leash law in effect. Because he may be in violation of the leash law, and you may be able to get the dog warden to do something about that.
The rules of the trail are posted and said your dog must be on a leash.
Gotcha.
So I don't know if that's legally binding or what.
Well, it's a user agreement. It's like my guy with PayPal. If you use something, service out there or something, and there's terms posted, you by use have implicitly agreed.
Okay, but short of finding out who he is, I really have no recourse.
Correct.
Right. Okay. Well, thanks, Carl. That answers my question.
Okay, good luck.
All right, thank you.
All right, bye. Whew, Yves, I don't know what to do with that one. It's tough sometimes. 540-0580. Jeff, you're on with Carl Rominger. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Carl. How are you doing today?
Good.
I have an insurance question. We had some hail damage a while back and on our home, and it was fairly sizable. So we worked it out with the insurance company. We got a contractor come in to make sure it was reasonable price, and the insurance company cut a few checks to us. The largest of the check, which was pretty substantial, needed to be signed by the mortgage bank.
Uh-huh.
And when I went into the bank to get them to sign it, they said, well, go ahead, hand us the check, because we don't sign it to give back to you. We keep the money, and we pay the contractor to make sure everything is done. Can they do that legally?
The short answer is it was payable to them and you?
Correct.
And you signed it first before you gave it to them?
No, they don't have it. I didn't give it to them.
Yeah. The short answer is every time I've ever done this with anything, the check always gets sent back. So is it legal? I guess it's payable to multiple parties. So you guys have to reach an agreement, right? Because it's payable to all of you. That would be my thought on the matter. Whether it's legal or not, it's payable to you guys, so it's whatever you guys can agree on. If you can't, I guess you just don't cash the check and have them reissue it, but they're not going to, the insurance company is going to, because they're named insured, or probably is a duty to make sure that that's taken care of. I'm not going to ask you what bank it is, but you might want to work your way up the totem pole there.
Okay.
All right?
All right. Thank you very much for your time.
All right, no problem. Yeah, I think it's legal because everybody's on the check. It's sort of like you make a check payable to me and Matt and I got to figure out whose account it's going in, and if we can't, I don't know, what do we do? Slug it out, I guess. 540-0580. I'll see you after the last break here, I think.
Let's return to Weekend Appointment with Carl Rominger on WHP 580.
Hey, welcome back. 540-0580. Keith. Hey, Keith.
Hey.
What's going on, brother?
Thanks for taking my call. You just had a person called in and talked about a dog that's attacking them on a trail there.
Is it yours?
No.
Oh, okay.
But, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, wouldn't he be within his rights to, let's say, carry a handgun and just shoot the thing if it attacks him or his dog?
The short answer is probably yes. The long answer is what a nightmare, because, unless there's a camera out there, I'm sure there's going to be 3 different stories about what happened. And number 2, based on the guy's aim, he already hit the other guy with a pepper spray instead of the dog, so I'm not sure he wants to shoot at it with a gun.
Yeah, he should have had the gun with him the first time and just shot the dog.
I can also tell you that justifiably shooting a dog always doesn't work out well. I know I hunt in some land up in New York, and the guy his land I hunt on. I said to him, like, what about that farm next door? Can we hunt over there? And he goes, well, I shot their dog a couple of years ago, so no. And the dog was overeating his chickens. And that didn't work out real well because, of course, the people, even though he was justified, didn't feel that he was justified.
Yeah. Hey, some dogs are capable of killing a man.
Oh, yeah, and without a doubt, if a dog were attacking, well, you can absolutely privilege to kill a dog as attacking your livestock or fowl under Pennsylvania law, and attacking your child or potentially if you're threatened. Of course, you still have that duty to retreat, except that, interestingly, it's not a person, it's just property because...
If the dog's not on a leash, he can outrun you.
Dogs and toasters have the same legal status when it comes to property crime, but they do have special... and killing a dog, well, try to kill a cat in Pennsylvania. That'll get you in a lot of trouble, too. Justification's pretty much the only thing you have going for you. All right, Keith.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, I wouldn't advise that the guy who missed with the pepper spray shoot the dog with a gun because we don't want to miss either. Bob. Hey, Bob.
Yeah, hey, how you doing? Great program. Listen, I listened to the fellow who talked about sickle cell anemia. It was very interesting. I think there's one thing he's overlooking, and that's over-treatment. And I watch the program on TV, and I read a lot of medical articles, and that sickle cell is, they say, a gene that comes as protection for malaria. People who get sickle cell, and some people have some remedies, but my concern is that there's over-treatment.
Yeah.
Doctors themselves say there's over-treatment. I had my tonsils out, and then when I was a kid, they took everybody's tonsils out. I go to join the service, and they said, hey, you got your tonsils. I said, not on my tonsils. They took it. Oh, they grow back. And then they take appendix out. They take teeth out. And I watched a friend. I have a book here. It's called Over-Treatment. My area is in finance, and it talks about the cost of it. And our local medical association, I'm not against doctors, says that due to tort, in part, 93% of the physicians they polled say they give tests to their patients that they probably do not need, and they do things. They also offer the patients pills, and many doctors tell their patients, hey, why don't you lose weight, why don't you do this, why don't you exercise? But they select the pills, and it goes from one pill to the next, and it gets worse. I had a friend, he had his prostate removed, and then they took his testicles out. He did not want to live. That's an example. I have another situation where they said, hey, you might have cancer. We don't know. We do this. We give him a test. You go to 3 or 4 doctors. Anyway, they did the operation. There's no cancer. And in this particular situation, the people were smart enough to say, hey, don't touch the colon, don't touch this, don't touch that.
Now, of course, and I tell you, like, I went to the doctor the other day, I got my flu shot, got my checkup, and we were going through my prescriptions, of which there are, like 1,000 of them these days. He says, you don't have, I have some antibiotics you're supposed to take when you go to the dentist. He's like, well, we don't do that anymore. He's like, we don't do that. We decided that it doesn't really matter. So I guess now when you go to the dentist, for instance, if you have mitral valve prolapse, you don't have to take an antibiotic anymore.
Well, I don't take it. I don't take the flu shot because I check my vitamin D, and when it's above 30, that means I don't need to get. I haven't had the flu for 30 years. I haven't had a cold for 20. I'll probably die tomorrow. But the other point I wanted to mention was...
Well, you'll die off the air, so we won't know.
Yeah. Hey, the other thing I wanted to mention was that Texas, you can get a policy. This guy talked about not getting a policy. Paul Deibler, I had a company. I had one of our employees. He says, "Hey, I how much are you paying for insurance?" He told me $350. I said, "That's obnoxious." I said, "I'll get you a policy." He says, "No, I have a precondition." I said, "What's your precondition?" He says, "My mother got diabetes." "Oh, type 1?" "No, type 2." I said, "It had nothing to do with this." So, make a long story short, I got him a policy for $98, covered everything. It was not what's called a loaded policy, which covers your toenail cleanings, wigs, trips to Bermuda if you don't feel good. In New York State, it's $18,000 for the same policy. In Texas, it's $5,000. So you can go out of state, and Deibler, he got us out of state insurance company, and we did very good. So I'd make that point. You're a libertarian. I'm a libertarian.
Right.
I think doctors do things wrong, and I think they need lawyers. And I think one of the best things doctors and lawyers can do is say, hey, advise their patient or their clients, Be very careful when you go to a doctor, and I would say be very careful when you get medicine. When I was in my 20s...
Hey, Bob, I got a couple callers holding. I got to take those.
Yep. Okay.
All right,
thanks.
thanks.
Thanks a lot. Great program. See you.
Bob, thank you very much, but I got to get Jim on. Jim, what's going on?
Hi, Carl. Question for you.
Yeah.
The question has to do with registration and background checks for firearms. I inherited a 22 bolt action rifle and a 16 gauge single shot shotgun. Am I required to provide information to the government?
No. Long arms are not registered, and you don't need to do anything to transfer them, my friend.
Okay, great.
All right, Jim.
Well,
Here comes
I just was going to stick them in the closet, and I didn't want somebody to see it. And
got it.
Later. So.
What the government doesn't know, they don't need to know. No, there's nothing requirement on that. Listen, folks, Weekend Appointment. Go to weekendappointment.com. Get my number. I'm happy to see you in the office. Make sure you claim that free will. And it's been great doing this show with you this afternoon. I'll see you next week at 2 o'clock, all right?